Guys, this is really important. Don't worry about it. Alright, here is what comes in a camo kit. So each kit's going to contain, depending on the kind of camo, a series of 4 to 5 stencil sheets, which is plenty to do. Typically one rifle and one pistol based on what we've got going on here. The sheets are in no particular order. You can kind of play with them however you want. You'll see you've got small pieces, larger, fatter pieces, skinnier pieces. This is more of a general overall camo. So what I want to do a little bit is talk about how we lay it. Going to get a sticker. Stickers are always going to be random, and usually a thank you card like this. And you can shoot me an email at info@gunninkdesigns.com if you have questions. And I should be getting my website back up soon. As of right now, Gun Ink Designs is down while I rebuild it. Trying to include a blade. So looking at some options for blades that are, make it budget friendly so I don't have to jack the price up. But I want to give you a blade just in case you don't have one, because you're going to see when I do my stencils, I always use a blade. These are great. I like these a lot because once you buy the body, you can just buy the kits of these number 11 blades, and they work awesome for grabbing your stencils. And so when I say grab them, I mean I literally grab the tip of the stencil and I pull it like that. That's how I pull my stencils. So here is the AK12 we're going to be working on. Something to note when you're working with a lot of deep grooves like this groove right here, it makes it really difficult to lay stencils without getting gaps, which basically creates fogging, if you will, underneath the stencil. So what we want to do is make sure that we have enough that goes down into each area. Now I'm using my black stick, which I've had listed before. Black stick allows me to fill in the gaps, allows me to make sure that I find all my grooves and get a good solid lay. Now once this is all down, you'll see it's like that. Now before I paint, I will always squish it. And I squish it to make sure that it gets down in each groove really well, because I don't like paint to go underneath. So right here, if I'm not careful, or if you spray too heavy, paint will go underneath there and it looks bad. So now, as I said before, no particular order. However, the way that I like to do it is I use the larger, fatter pieces, because black is going to be that primary color. And I'm just going to use a couple of these. We're going to lay them in there. Use my nail. We're going to make sure we push down every corner possible. And get down in here. Now, this is a really difficult piece because I typically like my Picatinis to be a solid color. I don't like to put camo on them. So like this piece right here where it goes in, if I can get that in focus there, I'm actually going to use my blade. I'm going to carefully cut that right out like that so that I don't have the camo going on top of the Picatinny, because ultimately you end up with big gaps. Now you can do it, but you will, without question, have large sections of underspray, and there really is not a lot you can do about it, so I would avoid it. So when I lay it like this, I can start without, right up underneath it, so each piece is intentionally placed. You can always say, you know what, I don't like that. Just peel it up and keep going. So on the larger pieces, because I want the black to just be large blocks of black, and then on top of this I'm going to lay gold, which will be more basically large blocks of that. And then I'm going to throw in an occasional dot of each color. We'll get the same essential lay down on this style. Now there's some styles that I do a little bit differently, or if you really want, there's a couple that I'm going to have available. You'll see here, I'm going to throw this dot kind of right here in the middle. So you'll see the little dots get used periodically, and I like it. I like just the little abstract pieces here and there to keep it from being too big of a negative space. So that's how we're going to do that. And this goes right up against here. And that we'll continue that process. So we'll do the rest of this body. And if I'm going to cross them over, like in this case, I'm not crossing them over because I don't really need to. So I'm going to place my next large one here. And so there'll be a gap here, which will be okay. Now, as I go to lay more stencils, at some point, they're going to go from here to here. And that's good. Once they go from here to here, I'm just going to split them so that when I paint them, and then you go to reassemble later, camo will be more continuous. Now you can do individual sections, which like this obviously will have its own piece, but it gives it a little bit more of a finished look if you drive it through. So we're going to do that here, for example. So the way the dust cover sits on, it sits right along this lit ridge right here. So we're going to actually use our stencil to connect these two pieces. I'm going to pull a big fat one. I'm going to lay it right across here. I'm doing this because I want the stencils to help me hold the pieces together. Now, you see, these stencils that I'm using are so soft that it allows me to push it right in over this dimple here, see? All right, let's keep going here. I'll lay the rest of these down. And if you want, you could even cross them over like this. It's not necessary, but not a problem. We'll just continue the process right here like this. And we're just going to carefully push that down right on top. There's no need to worry about, oh gosh, this stencil's hanging out in the air. That's fine. When you spray it, that's going to disappear when you remove your stencil. And again, I'm going to pull one more large piece. And that's just going to go right here. Now this, I'm actually going to wrap around the bottom ever so slightly like that. Cool, so this side is done. Now, we're going to very carefully flip it over because we don't want to move anything. And we're going to do the larger stencils on this side. Now, if you happen to get a stencil where I got a little too close and cut the edge off, which on this one it was right on it, but it's okay, you can't tell. Just put that right on the edge. It's not a big deal. You're going to have so many pieces and parts of your stencils. I'm going to run this one right here. Again, I want to push it right up against that edge, right up against each edge. I'm going to work it on. And then we'll push it down on there so it covers that little dimple. And we'll keep going. Keep going. We're just pulling all these larger pieces out. And you see, I haven't even finished one whole sheet yet. I'm going to rock this one up high. And I'll show you why. So you want it to look as random as possible. You don't want there to be like perfect lines or perfect shapes going across or anything like that. See here, we got to make sure that we keep this level here. Don't squish it down too much. Let's see, let's get this fat boy here, and it's gonna go like that. Let's go like this. So we get these pieces. We've got a dimple right here. This will be one that will get underspray under it, so you have to be really careful. So again, you see I use my black stick and I just push that down in there nice and neat like that. And I get a little bit of wrap around the bottom, so when we go to spray, you kind of have that continuous feel. I'm going to grab one more big one here. And I'm going to jump these from here to there. Again, continuing this process across. Now, you might be wondering, because I didn't talk about it in the beginning, but yes, this is a different black. This is Duracoat Combat Black that I have on here because I can't spray right on top of the GoatGuns paint. So this has been blasted stripped, however you go about it. Man, there's so many dimples in here. It's going to be really hard to get them like that. Oh, this empty space right here, it's on the bottom, so you're not going to really see it. But I'm going to find a little shape to throw in there to give us some texture here. Actually, we're going to use a smaller one. We got a little dot. We'll just put this little dot right there to give it, so that's not totally just blank right there. Cool. Now, I'm going to pull a dot from one of these sheets. I want this one right here. Bam. I'm going to drop it in here. And we're going to pull this shape here. I'm going to drop it in really high up here. And again, you got to be careful not to squish it down because there's nothing holding these parts. And then I'm going to get myself a little shape for up top here, which is again going to overhang. It's totally fine. You can push it in if you want to. We're going to get ourselves a little shape to fit in here to give us that extra. Let's put it low like that. That's pretty much it. You don't want to overdo it. You're trying to leave as much negative space as you can. Okay? Now, how do we do this one? There's a couple of ways we can go about this. I'm actually going to be doing gold accent, so the release mechanism, trigger, whatever you want to call it right here, the grip, is going to be gold. So that's fine. There's a few ways to do this. Because of the shape of it, it's going to make it much, much more difficult. If I try to run camo all the way down into here, yeah, it's going to be pretty much impossible to do it without having shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus the camo on the upper section. And there's a few ways. On a larger one, when you have more, or if you really wanted to push it, you would run a tape line, and you would tape it off right there, and you would run tape, and you would tape it off right down here. But even taping it off, getting the tape down in that divot is going to be extremely difficult because everything you do is going to leave gaps for paint to go under. So you just want to be careful. So in this case, all I'm going to do is camo the upper section. Okay, we're going to leave all this, and because when I go back and spray it, whatever my final coat will be, which will be gray, all of this is going to end up gray anyway. So we're going to be okay with it. And I'm going to use this big piece right here, and I want to see if it's going to go all the way over, which it is. So we're going to start here and push it. Remember to work your stencil up into the shape. And we'll just leave everything else down here without camo so that it doesn't get all weird, because it will get weird. And then we're going to flip it because these things are so small. I'm going to make sure I have room to do something on this side, which we're going to do like this. So you want to pay attention to spacing on your round items, because you don't want this suddenly laying right on top of that, because that'll obviously defeat the whole purpose of your gaps. Because we'll just go in over here, and we'll throw this in, and we'll fill in that space. Okay, we're going to grab one more for this front section. Make sure we have space. We're going to run it from here. It'll go across that way, and then we're going to find a smaller one for over here, which this long skinny one, which will be good. That'll give us a little bit here, like so. Cool. Now, like I said, if you want to, I'm going to throw a dot right there. That didn't work. Throw it right there. You can see how much I use my blade. If you really wanted to get crazy and try to put a dot down in there, put a little piece, you could, but it's going to get messy, and you're going to end up with this little hodgepodgey, weird-looking thing down there. We're going to avoid that. We're going to utilize this space, and we're going to run our camo like that. And you can see I still have 3 plus all of this. We are going to use a lot of it, and it really is going to depend on the size of what we're working on here. Now, we will end up with basically, that's kind of where we're going. And depending on how we're going, I'm going to be doing the mag in the same gray as the finished body, and then the mag's going to get a gold bottom. I haven't decided on the mags yet. It might just be, we might just leave the mags black. I don't know. And then there'll be a couple of small gold accents, but I'm not completely doing this whole unit as in detail as usual, and that's going to help keep the price down for those people that want to buy them. Anyway, this is kind of where we are. I hope this is helping. we'll spray this, and then the next layer we'll go in and throw the next ones on. This is where it starts to get important to really pay attention where your base level camo stickers are, stencils are, because the next layers going on top are going to be laid the same basic way, but they need to be spaced and they need to make sure they overlap almost every single piece. You'll see more as we go. Stick with me. Okay, before we start painting, this is the gold I'm using here. And I just wanted to also show, I took these two pieces apart, and to do that, basically what I do is I get right in here with the razor blade and I slice that away. And the reason I want to do that is because when I'm painting, I still want to make sure that I get paint inside and around all the edges, so that when we go to do the next layer, we're going to snap this back together the way it's supposed to. We'll lay it in place just like that, and we'll lay our next layer of stencils, and then we will cut that apart as well. In this case, because the way that this is made is designed to be just like this, we're going to actually paint it together. The only downside with that is that obviously the pieces on the inside will stay that color, but that's okay because this is permanently like this. It's not designed to come apart, whereas this is going to be in pieces. So I like it to feel like it's a more finished for each individual piece. This one, as you can see, ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to spray gold everywhere that's here. You'll get a little gold overspray down in there, which doesn't bother me at all because we're going to finish it with gray. So all of this will be finished in gray. So we'll be good to go. So we're going to spray this in gold. We'll come back. We'll put it all back together the way we had it. And then we'll do the next layer of stencils so you can kind of see how we're laying them on. And then we'll move on to that final color of gray. Okay, next level. So we have the gold sprayed, and as I said here, we left this black down here because the next level, once we put the stencils on, we'll finish everything up and it'll be one finished coat of gray. So a couple things to note, I did put this back on, so it looks like the stencils are connected, but they're actually cut. So flip this over, you can see here, everything is lined up. So when you go to actually assemble this, it'll feel like these were all together to begin with, which is kind of what we want. Now, it is time to lay the next level. And you have to double check some of your previous stencils. We're gonna make sure all of our edges are still down. This has been sprayed and then been sitting all day today. So we're gonna do that. So this spot right here, this one I didn't catch. And it's still black, so I'm going to push it down, but it did get a little more underspray than I like, and you can't see it too much. It's not too bad, but we're going to make sure that that's down because I don't want that to get worse. So we just want to be careful there. So as we go, we're just going to recheck and make sure everything is laid. So here we go. In this case, I think what we'll do, we may push a stencil across here too, and then we'll cut that, so that'll be fine. So we're gonna go ahead and grab the next layers. Let's knock this one out first. So again, we're gonna do pretty much the same. Like I said, this is a super basic set and it's designed to be nice and easy. So what I want is I want the stencils to cross over. So occasionally you'll get, like if I do it right here, for example, let me make sure I'm in the frame. If I do it right here, I'm gonna get a little tiny piece of gold right here. And then all of this will be gold. And then see here, right here, this will turn gold, whereas everything here will be black. So we peel all that up, it'll be black, it'll cut through, so you have a little shot of gold and then gold all through here. And we want to make sure that we have every opportunity to connect these pieces. And we're going to lay in just a little bit more. And again, I'm going to try to connect here. I want to bring this down in there. So we're going to connect here. I'm going to lay it up. So here I'm making contact and I'm making contact. And I'm going to do the same on this side. So you want to pay attention to your placement at all times because it does make a difference. Come on, there we go. So I'm gonna use this one to kind of center this gap up here. So still not touching these, filling in that space, coming all the way down, and it's making contact all the way around, which is exactly what I want. I'm gonna pull this like more medium size one. These are great for filling in empty spaces. So down here, I'm just gonna cross this up. So you can see I'm adding a little bit more, and I'm just trying to keep a nice even space. I'm gonna do another medium piece. I'm gonna come down here. I'm gonna cross this gap up. Again, I'm gonna use my black stick to make it easier. And check my location. We're gonna fill this space right up here, like so. And that gives me pretty good fill. There'll be a little space right in here. That's gonna all be gray. The gray is gonna travel everywhere. You're seeing gold now will be gray. Takes a little practice. It's okay. It's okay. I make the videos to hopefully help cut some of your time and your learning time down. Because I'll tell you, I have messed up a lot of paint jobs. I have messed them up. I'm gonna throw one right here, and that wraps this piece up. There you go. You don't have to stress about it too much. If you have a small piece, it may be right up in here. I could put one. Maybe I'll put a dot there. It'd be a good spot just to add a dot. And again, even with the dot, I'm gonna lay it over, and that's just gonna break it up right there for me. Cool. Now let's see if we can do this. Be a little challenging, but we're gonna make it happen. We're gonna do it. I'm gonna lay this one right here. Now, if you wanted to get crazy, you could drop the pins in there. There's a pin that goes through this part of the body through that, and that would definitely make it easier to hold it all together, but it'll be all right. We'll do just fine. Got a little bit more left on this sheet. We're going to use all of this sheet as we go here. And again, I am just crossing over to make sure I cover, and I'm leaving space in between all these pieces here. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it might be easier to do this after so I can cut it. All right. I'm gonna grab this big piece. I'm gonna use it to kind of cross over all of this and into this area and down into there. And the thing that's hard to kind of remember is that because of the way these stencils work, you're not going to see all of these shapes. Because even with the black ones, when we peel them up, you'll see the black shape, but all of these shapes, they're all going to be broken, which is what we want actually. But it takes a little to get used to, because you're thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have this shape of gold. Well, you're not. You're only gonna have spaces right in here and over here and here where you're gonna have those accents of gold, because we use the larger stencils to create the black blocking. Once we take it apart, we're gonna go through that and look at it. How am I gonna get this on there? I'm gonna go across the back here. I'm gonna use this. There you go. Trying to get around that little piece there. And guys, this is really important. Don't worry about it. Have fun with it. I probably stress about it more than your average person, but that's because I know that every job that I'm doing is going up for sale, and I want to make sure that people get a good product. So I stress about it. Worry about it. I'm like, okay, is this right? Is this right? Is this perfect? I worry about the underspray a lot, and even though so many people don't even notice it when I talk to them about it, to me it's important. I notice it, and it reflects on the work that I do, which is always something I'm going to be aware of and pay attention to. So, all right, here we go. Let's make sure this is all lined up. Gotta be careful as you go because you're moving all this stuff around. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one very carefully. Right there. So I do that so I can work on this and this without screwing it all up. And as we go here, you notice we just a little wrap here and there, be good to go. Now, something that you can do on this gold, depending on how you're doing it. So if you're doing like a black camo, for example, and you wanted to get that a little bit more proper look, you would lay like your solid black color down like we did. Put your first layer of stencils down, then you lay whatever color you want to be your middle color. And of course, if you're doing like a 4-color, then you would do this in more, you would do an extra layer to it. So you have to think in a little bit more depth when you add a 4th color. You also want to go a little bit more sparingly on your stencils because you'll get so crowded so fast that it'll just end up being messy. So in this case, we're only doing 3 colors, so we're doing this second layer of stencils a little tighter than we did the first one because we're filling all that space up. But anyway, so if you're working on the black camo, in which we could have done on this one as well, you would typically, when you spray your middle lighter color, you go back with black and you just mist it, hit it with a little bit of black here and there. And then you throw on your next layer of stencils. And the reason you do that is so that you don't have sharp edges. And on this one, we will have sharp edges. Sharp edges just basically meaning where the stencil line is, it'll be a perfect line. Whereas if I mist it with black, these black areas here that are going to be black that we left there before, they're going to blend into some of that black overspray, which will give you a little bit of a softer line. And it's a cool look. And I definitely do that, and I like that look quite a bit. But in this case, we're not doing that. Also, these two are a little closer than I like, but what you're going to notice is there's a stencil there, so you're never going to, you won't see it. Okay, so I want to make sure here, and here. So these two are way closer than I really wanted, but they're not going to actually connect because this is all going to be black all the way up to there. And then I'm actually running my blade up here. I'm just going to really carefully cut this out. Because as I said before, I don't really like it going into the rail. All right. If you're still with me, I appreciate you. We're going to throw in a little piece up here. I hope you're finding this beneficial. And I love any feedback that you have, any thoughts that you have, things that you like and don't like. You know, if you have your own ideas, throw them at me. Everybody's going to do it a little bit differently. There's some really amazing Duracoders and Ceracoders out there. And every one of them kind of have their own style. And I have developed my own style and leaned in on a lot of what those folks have done over the years. There, you're gonna do that. I feel pretty good about that. There you go. Now we're gonna flip this because I want to make sure. Yeah, we're gonna be okay without that connecting. That's okay. I might be able to get a piece on there. Anyway, so you just got to kind of play with it and work it in your own style. I'm going to get this just to sit here. I just want to catch the edge of that on there, and then I'm going to cut it off because that's actually going to be difficult to do like that. I just want that edge because it's going to give me some connection. But it's not going to work as well as I wanted to. That's okay. That's all right, that's all right. Try it this way. See if that'll work. Yeah. And I'm gonna cut that. Well, it's trying. It's trying. Okay, here we go. We just get this on here. And again, this is that freaking crazy part. It is very hard to get every nook and cranny and not forget that you left a space. Oh, remember this piece I was worried about? This stencil is going to sit right on top of that edge, which is going to help me hold it down. So that works out great. Again, I'm going to pull a blade. Now, as you can see, these camo paint jobs take quite a bit of time. So if you're just buying one of my pieces of work, I hope this helps you just appreciate the amount of love and care that I put into them to make sure it's the best product for each person. And even though I'm going to do 5 of these in a similar style, they're all going to have their own characteristics because the camo was laid differently on every single one. And I would never really want them to all look exactly the same because that's boring. Unless you're doing a set or something, that would make, I could totally get with that. So I just want a little small piece. I'll pull another small piece from up here, and this piece here is gonna go over here, like that. And put a couple more over here, and we're about ready to throw some paint down. And once I put my gray on this, I'm gonna get this down in this crack so I can get that space filled nicely. Like so. I feel like some of these look like dogs or dinosaurs, I don't know. All right, I'm gonna lay this across here. I wanna fill in some of these spaces. Like here, I have this one random space, so I just want something there. So once I hit it with color, it'll give me some little bit more broken up line. And now I need something to go across here. Nice, skinny, and straight. Bam. Like that, right up in there like that. I think, do I have a tiny dot somewhere? Because if I get one tiny dot, I'll feel good about that space up there. I put one right yonder. Yep, I'm in Georgia, sorry. Sorry about you. Oh, we need a little piece on top there to fill, to make that look complete, don't we? Let's see if we can throw this on there. That is gonna be sweet. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Hope there's some ladies in here. Again, I'm gonna go back here. I gotta straighten this bad boy up. I'm gonna get our stencils where we want them. I'm gonna take this blade, get right up in here. Another blade, and we're going to cut. I cannot emphasize how important it is to have a sharp blade so you can cut this and leave these little bitty pieces in place, because otherwise what happens is, one, you scratch the crap out of your project. This one's hard to find the edge. One, you're going to scratch the crap out of your project, and two, it's really hard on the small pieces. Because it pulls, it'll drag your stencil. And if it drags your stencil, it's going to be really, really difficult to leave little pieces on one side or the other, like this little tiny piece right there, which is barely going to have any impact because it's laying on top of another stencil, but that's okay. That's part of it. Alrighty, folks, we're going to put this in the paint booth. and put some paint on it. Now, one of the things that's really difficult, and for a lot of you who are watching this, you're probably going to be using spray paint. Man, I gotta tell you, if you're using spray paint, God bless you, because it's going to be a pain in the ass to do multiple layers like this. But there's no way around it. If you're going to do spray paint, I highly recommend some sort of modeling spray paint because it tends to give a nice fine mist. You want to make sure that you're laying it down and doing all your angles from enough of a distance to fill all this space, because if you don't, you're going to have everything else thick and you're not going to be able to fill in these spaces, and that's going to be tough. And when you're working in multiple layers, you're going to see how thin this paint is. If you're working in multiple layers, if you spray this layer thick, you're going to have a big fat line when I peel that stencil up. Now, something to note is I use these constantly, especially for models and goat guns, and I look for the holes that are in there, screw holes and things, and that is what becomes my holder. So the better you have it in there, the better it is, and I can hold this up to spray and it works out really well. This piece, for example, I'm actually going to be going right here, and I just work it in like that, and then I can hold it up and I can spray it at different angles. So that's pretty helpful. But however you want to go about it, but we're going to move on to spray, and then we'll come back and we'll take this apart. And what I want to go over is when we take it apart, I want to look at where the stencils are and how the pattern comes together as we take it apart. Be right back. Okay, here is our final color. I opted to go with a darker gray. I think it'll play nicely with the gold. We're going to find out. So see, everything is done now. One of the things I really wanted to point out is when you're spraying, it's really important that you can still see some of the yellow stencil. If you black or gray, in this case, everything out completely, your paint's too thick. And that's really important to notice. And there's always going to be spots here and there where you might get some ridges, but we want to avoid that as much as possible. So all I'm going to do is I just want to go through a couple of things. So this piece we were talking about earlier, the base one has the black. It goes all the way around there. This one is going to have gold there and gold here, and as this black blends in here, this will be gold and that black will come through. So we're just going to pick this first one up so you can see it, and I'm just doing this to sort of illustrate why we do the layers. You see there's your gold, and it plays nicely. And so we want to avoid the ridges. You see, you don't really get much ridge. The thicker your paint, the more ridge you're going to get. Now here is another piece laying on top of a bottom stencil. So you're going to see yellow with a little bit of gold. Now we're going to grab this bottom stencil, and I'm using my blade because it allows me to pick up. You just need to be really careful that you don't go too far and score your paint job, because that really is a sucky experience. Now we're going to go ahead and wrap this around. This is going to pull from here. So now you can see how the gold looks almost like it's under the black, but the black was actually our first layer, then our gold, then our dark gray. So you can see how that plays. So we're just going to go ahead and pull the rest of this off real quick, and then I'll go off camera and I'll do the rest because it takes a little bit of time. I don't want to rush it, and the more I get into the nooks and crannies, I got to be extra careful not to scratch. You can see I really like my stencils to be down tight, so it makes them a little bit more challenging to get up. But this blade, and the whole point of including the blade in the packaging is because it makes this job a whole lot easier. Here we go. That one is definitely down. So we're just going to keep going. And you can do, I painted this, I don't know, a couple of hours ago. So I can do that with Duracoat because it'll dry pretty quickly for me. Here we're going to see, oh yeah, this will be good. Okay. So here you see one little tiny stencil overlapping with the gray, overlapping with the gold, but when we move it, it's just going to have the black underneath it. because that was one of our first initial spots, which gives us that little extra piece right there. So as we go, pull these all up. Yes, I know this part takes a while and it's tedious, but it's part of the process. Not super exciting to watch on a video, but just want you to see what the finished product is of what we've been working on. It's so funny too, because sometimes on these camo jobs, depending on how detailed, especially if you get into a 4-layer, you can remove all your stencils, go to assemble, and then realize there's still a stencil that you missed because they get lost sometimes. Okay, got one left here. More like that, you get a little piece left over and you won't realize it's still there. Awesome. Okay. So there we go. You can see here we did the trigger here in gold. So you're going to get this here like that. And that'll basically be our black, gold, and gray camo. Now, again, you can go in and you can mist some black in the gold, which will give you a little bit better fade. You can also do, which I often do, is go back and mist the whole thing in black, and then I'll rub it out. In my case, I use a little bit of acetone, and I rub that out, and it gives us a dirtier look. So again, it's not so perfectly clean. But I think we're just going to rock it like this, and we'll do the assembly. So I'm going to continue to remove the rest of the stencils off, and then I'll show you what all of it looks like, and then we'll go from there. And we have the finish. Now, as you can see, I've kind of got a couple of the gold accents on there, and I had decided that the grip and the mag were going to kind of pull that gray in. Now I am doing an assembly and disassembly video separately, and this will be included in the assembly video, so I would encourage you to check that out. We're not going to go through the whole assembly for this paint project, as we are primarily focusing on how to use these. So we used one whole sheet, most of this sheet, and you still have 3 sheets left with just a couple that I decided to pull out. So you could still do a whole nother project with this size easily, or if you wanted to do a coordinating pistol or something, 1911, then you'd have plenty to do that as well. So hopefully you will find that these are good. Also, if you decided to do a 3rd layer of stencils, of course you're going to end up using another sheet at least to make that happen. If you start incorporating things like doing the mags, or if you wanted to do the grip, I don't normally do that, but if you did, of course you can use more stencils. But as you can see, a full project just like this, 5 sheets is more than enough, and you'll have some left over to play around and do other projects. So I hope you like it. The design is up to you, but the layering of the camo pieces is really important. If you go to a 3rd layer, as I mentioned, caution on the amount that you put down on the 2nd layer so that you have more spacing to work with, so that it's not super crowded. Also, on the gold layer, or whatever your secondary layer is, you can dust that with black so it'll settle in and give you softer edges. Or when it's all said and done, go back and dust it with black and rub the black off and give yourself a more dirty look, in case you would do it with all of these pieces as well, so that they all sort of go together. But it really just depends on what your look you're going for is. In this case, this is the product that we're after. It's going to have the rest of the parts that go with it are going to be black. Save the gold tip here, and that'll be that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always hit me up in here. You can also shoot me an email at info@gunninkdesigns.com. Thanks so much. Deuces.